So this session is going to be Take Me Home Ops Road. And really the goal is going to be to talk about some of the different Zerto operations, what they are, when to use them. I'm not going to go into any live demos or anything like that, only because we have some hands-on labs, so you guys can do this yourself and really get some experience with how to use Zerto and what situations you're really going to apply this. I also have some scenarios at the end, so I'll try and make this as interactive as possible. My name is Nick Scola, as you can see here. I've been with Zerto for almost 2 years. Prior to that, I was a customer, and I currently work as a senior systems engineer on the strategic accounts team, so I deal with a lot of really big customers. I worked at a couple of big customers myself. You can see here I'm very involved with the VMware community. Myself and Ariel did a presentation this morning on the V community in general. I'm a former VMUG leader, but really the most important thing here is that I was a customer myself. So I've used the product, I've used the platform, and it's helped me solve some real world scenarios, so hopefully I can pass that knowledge on to you guys and gals. Now, just to get a sense of who I have in the room, how many people are new to Zerto? I hate you. All right. How many people have been using it for a while? Okay. How many people are in-house IT? All right. Partners? Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is try and level set everybody a little bit. And now, out of those people that are new to Zerto, how many of you actually went through training? All right, I'll take it. Awesome. So real quick, what sets Zerto apart is our journal. So in a nutshell, we replicate VMs from one place to another. Pretty straightforward. And if you have questions, just raise your hand, and hopefully I'll see you guys. We replicate VMs from one location to another, and when we do that replication, we maintain a journal of the changes. So if you ever have worked with snapshot-based technologies, whether software, hardware, whatever it may be, think of that as taking a photograph, right? You're taking a photograph of a point in time, and you're going to send that photograph over to the other side and have 2 copies, one on the source, one on the destination. Taking up space and capacity on both sides in most cases, and you have a single point in time to recover to. Now, if you have the ability to maintain multiple snapshots, then you have multiple points in time that you can recover to. Because of the fact that we're doing this via journal, we're taking checkpoints roughly every 5 to 10 seconds in most cases, right? So if you go into your journal to do any kind of operation, whether it's a test or a file restore or whatever, you'll see that you have these increments. They're going to be, like I said, 5 to 10 seconds apart. So why is that important, right? When you're going through a situation where you have any kind of data loss event, it's great to get your data up and running as quick as possible, right? And there's a lot of technologies out there that'll be able to help you with that. So you can have that near zero, recovery, get those virtual machines up and running over at the target site. All right, everything's all good, right? But where is that data coming from? How old is it? If you're doing this from a snapshot or you're restoring from a backup, typically it was 24 hours ago. So that means you just lost a whole day's worth of work. And depending on your situation, that might be tolerable, but in most cases, it's not. So if you have anything that's transaction-based, how many transactions can happen in, say, a minute, an hour, 4 hours, something like that? So you have to really take that into consideration when you're thinking about how does my recovery strategy account for not only the quick recovery to get the systems up, but to minimize the amount of data loss as well. And our answer to that is this journal. And in this example, let's say you have a ransomware infection around 5:26 in the afternoon. Your last snapshot was at 12:30. Well, you just lost 5 hours of data. Now, if you start thinking about man hours and things like that, if you have 100 people working, 100 people times 5 hours, it's 500 hours. What do you think the average employee salary is, right? Say $15 an hour. I'll go minimum wage in most places, right? $15 an hour times 500 hours. If you start doing that at scale, those numbers add up. It's a lot of money wasted, right? When you could take that money and buy Zerto licenses. I mean, that sounds like the most, right? So with us, because we're taking these slices and these points in time recovery, if I'm going back to that analogy of a photograph, think of the journal as taking a video. We're recording video, and you can always just rewind to whatever point in time, hit play, and go, right? So you can just rewind a couple seconds, or you can rewind back to the start. Straightforward? That work for the new people? Yeah, awesome. Now, the beauty of this is the fact that it works regardless if you're looking to restore files, if you're looking to do entire applications, or if your site's down, you need to recover the entire site, great, let's do it, okay? Quick overview on CDP. Think of this journal, and now it is a per VM journal, so each VM is going to have its own journal. You'll be able to configure sizes, length, things like that based on your protection groups, et cetera. Now, it's a first in, first out queue. We write data into the journal, and when you get to the point where you reached your limit, we take that data that's going to expire out, and we write it down to the replica disk at the target. So we maintain a replica disk and a journal, and your most recent changes are inside that journal. The journal can be as granular as 1 hour, or it can go up to 30 days. So you'll have the ability to customize this. And if you're using the one-to-many feature, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, you can actually customize what that journal looks like for the same VM, depending on what target you're going to. So think of the one-to-many as I'm taking a single VM, and I'm replicating it. Maybe I have a local copy, I have a copy going to my DR site, and I have a copy going to Microsoft Azure. All right? But Azure storage is really cheap. It's maybe cents on the dollar for a couple terabytes here and there. So I'm going to have 30 days worth of history going to Azure. My DR site, I'm worried about those outages that could really affect my business. Typically, you're going to maybe go back at least a week, possibly 2. Let's say you have like a holiday break or something like that. Your offices are closed. You don't realize there's an outage because you're busy being with the family. So you set a 2-week journal going to your DR site. And then if you have that third copy at the same site, maybe a different cluster, whatever, different storage at the same local site, that's just used for those real quick, I just deleted a file, I got to get it quickly. So you might only need a day or 2. So you can actually customize this based on whatever your company policy is. All right? So just kind of harping on the one-to-many a little more here. Think about how you can leverage that functionality, right? So not only is it great that you have that additional layer of protection. I know Mike was talking about, Mike Martino over there was talking in the data protection course about that 3-2-1 rule and having multiple copies of your data all over. The great thing about this is now you can actually start leveraging, all right? So for all my in-house people, how many times do you get a request from either an app owner or DBA, hey, I need a copy of this application or this database from last Thursday because I have to run some tests on it, et cetera. You guys ever experienced that? All right, see some nodding, love it. So rather than have to go through that process of cloning all this data and giving them a copy and then they're just going to tear it down a week later and you have to go through all this admin work, just run a failover test, right? Execute a failover test, let them RDP into it, go through whatever testing you need to do, done. Or you have the ability to do an offsite clone as well, and that's just if you're going to have a more permanent test where they're going to be working with this for an extended period of time, you can just take a clone of that VPG and send it off wherever you want to have it and let them bash away, right? Speaking of VPG, virtual protection group. So I mentioned that we replicate virtual machines from one location to another. Really, we replicate applications, right? Most applications are not a single VM anymore. If you've been around for a while, you remember the days of those data centers had a lot of pizza boxes, those one-use servers. Each one of them represented a separate application. So you had your Active Directory one here. Above it was the print server. You had the file server above it, right? That's all gone away with VMware. And now you just have these VMs all over the place. But there are situations where you have those multi-tiered applications, database server, app server, web server, but they all need to work together. So our solution is the virtual protection group, right? We're going to be able to provide consistency across all the VMs within that application, and when they're all recovered to the same point in time. And that's really the key here is we want to make sure that when you're pulling up those VPGs and you're recovering them, they're recovered to that same point in time across all the VMs. Now, that's one use case, and I'm going to dive into this a little bit more when I talk about the specific ops. but just want to make sure that we'll level set on that. Any questions so far on anything I've covered? We're pretty good? Yes? So the question was, what is the best practice for the number of VPGs, or the number of VMs to put in a VPG, right? So really depends. I'm going to give you the engineer answer. Depends on the application, depends on the change rate. Now, you can do some calculations to understand what that change rate looks like and if you're going to be able to meet your SLA. And what that SLA is really going to be defined is by your business, what your company defines or what you find out you need. Typically, what I like to do is I try to keep it limited by the application itself, right? So on average, what do you have as far as how many VMs in a specific application? Is it 10 or less, 25 or less? That's fine, yeah. So if you ever run into situations where, and I believe this was covered in the support session this morning, if you run into a situation where you're starting to see your SLA spiking or your RPO is spiking, there are some tweaks that can be done as far as how you lay out your disks and things like that. So you can mark certain drives as temp. You can start to figure out how those virtual machines are actually operating, right? And what I like about it is it helps you understand a little bit more about what's happening in your business, right? And sometimes I know we don't like to talk to other teams. And so what's your role? You're more VMware admin? Gotcha. So the reason I ask is sometimes you have to go talk to app owners, right? Depending on how your organization's set up. I always like to ask the question, you have virtual machines that you manage, right? How many people know exactly what every single one of those VMs does? Yeah, exactly. So it's a great way to go through a discovery, and I might be getting a little off topic, but it's definitely something important when it comes to VPGs, is the most important part of the Zerto experience to me is the application discovery. It's really understanding what VMs are talking to what VMs and what VMs make up your applications, right? Because if you run into a situation where you think you have all your VMs covered and you execute a live failover and you missed your database server, you have no application. So it's really important to understand what VMs comprise that application and make sure that you catch them all in that initial configuration. I know I went a little off. Did I answer your question? Awesome. All right, so reverse protection. It's pretty self-explanatory. We fail over to one side. Your data starts living over there. We replicate it back to the original source. Make sense? Cool. All right, now this one's a big one, the commit policy. Anybody know what the commit policy is? Come on, don't be shy. Correct. So the answer was, when you're performing a failover, do you want it to take effect that moment? Do you want to wait, or do you want to roll it back? Okay? And that's really what we're talking about here. It's the window where you can verify that the application is up and running at the target location. All right? So think of that as your window when you could hit that rollback button, right? Let's say you're going to fail over your systems. You hit the button. We fail everything up. The VMs start coming up at the target. You go to log in, and oh, wow, there's a Microsoft patch that's installing. Great. So I got to wait like 10 minutes. And after that 10 minutes, you find out that you have a blue screen of death. Now, I mean, we've never had a Microsoft patch fail, right? I mean, it's never happened to anybody, right? Never heard. Yeah, exactly. So if that does happen, and you run into a situation where, another example is a ransomware infection, right? Let's say you get infected with ransomware at 5 o'clock, so you pick that checkpoint at 4:59 and 58 seconds, and you think, all right, I'm good to go. I bring up that application at the target. Oh, man, I'm still infected. Darn. Because of that commit policy, that gives you the window where you can say, all right, let me roll this back. I'm going to be kind and rewind, right? Pick a different checkpoint, go through the process again until you find the one that you actually need. And what's great about that is it really helps you ensure that your operation is going to be successful. Okay? You want to make sure that, above all else, when you recover your systems, you're recovering to a point where things work. Because it's great if you get a VM that's over there, but if the OS isn't booting, who cares? You know, I've never seen a boss or, you know, any IT director or CIO that's like, hey, are the backups working? Right? You got some successful backups? Great. That's awesome. They don't care about that. Everybody cares about the restore, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's, can you resume your operations? And this is going to help you ensure that that's going to take place. Now, the options, think of none as, I trust that it's going to work, but I want to verify it. Okay, I'm going to go in there and just verify myself, and then I'm going to manually hit a button that says commit this, or roll it back, or whatever. Auto commit means after a certain amount of time, I'm going to assume that this application is good, and I'm going to put the copy on the target and make that one my default one. Or it's going to be my primary copy now. Auto rollback, just the opposite. After that period of time expires, I'm going to roll back this operation and get back to the state that I was in originally. Yes, ma'am?
How much time do you have to decide?
Good question. So the question was, how much time do you have to decide? By default, it's going to be 60 minutes. You can customize that, and you can customize it while you're going through the operation. You can set a site setting overall, say my default's going to be X, whatever you choose. It's really going to be dependent on some factors. You know, one of them is going to be scratch space and things like that, which I don't want to get too deep into, but you have the ability to customize it. And Mike, in your session, do you talk about scratch space and all that? Like, are you, a little bit? Okay. Find me outside and we'll talk more. So that just covers commit policies, and just think of it as your way to validate that these apps are good, okay? All right, so now we're going to get into the functions. And I picked functions for a very specific reason. So how many people here went into IT and said, I want to be a DR admin? No, seriously, come on, so don't be shy, raise your hands. All right, so DR is one of those things that usually gets, you know, thrown in your lap, right? It's somebody's telling you that you have to do this. You don't actually want to do it. It's a pain in the butt. Probably takes up about 3 months of your year. You have to talk to the storage guys and the network guys and get everybody in a room, and then it fails, and you have to go back, and you usually have these giant loose leaf binders, right, with each application. You have to go through and do a lot of reading and ensure that you're following the steps in the right order, and the steps haven't been updated in about 6 months and 6 years, whatever. And it's just a big, convoluted process, right? So we at Zerto try to simplify this process, right? And our goal is to really make this as easy as we can for you. And there are certain features you definitely need to have in your environment, right? Anybody know what RTFM stands for? Keep it PG. Okay. So last year, if you might have come over to the expert bar, I may have been drawing this out a lot, and I tried to make it my thing, and now I have stickers, so hopefully I'll have some left, be able to give you guys some. RTFM used to stand for Read That Friendly Manual. However, now we're looking at recovering, testing, failover, and move, okay? These are the core components of what Zerto is going to be able to provide you. Now, the R, I kind of go back and forth if I want to go recover, if I want to go resume, because they're kind of one and the same, right? But this should be the foundation of what you guys are trying to do on a day-to-day basis, right? Now, the recover, the resume, how many people know that we can restore files from the journal? Or how many people don't know, excuse me? Okay. So within our journal, we have the ability to actually recover individual files. So pros and cons, I mean, a lot of our customers already have backup software. I mean, they should have backup software with Zerto because they've upgraded to 7 and they love it, and et cetera. But they might use another platform for some reason. But going back to that discussion around periodic snapshots versus journal, think of all the checkpoints you have in your environment. So if there's changes to a file, just roll back to that checkpoint, pull up the file, you're back in business, okay? And what's great about this is, once again, I always hearken back to the data loss conversation because I think it gets overlooked in a lot of technology marketing, we'll just say, in general. And we could be guilty of it sometimes, but realistically, this is going to give you the ability to get your data back, right? To be the hero. Because once again, nobody cares about the backup being successful. They care about the restore being successful. And that's what you really want to do. And getting back to that discussion about man hours, you have 500 people in your environment. They lose a whole day's worth of work. That's a whole day's worth of work that they got to recreate. And you know what happens when end users have to do their work twice? How many people think they get happy? And they're going to write you a nice thank you note and say, hey, I really wanted to practice that. That was great. Thanks a lot. No, they're going to be complaining. You're going to hear about it, and your boss is going to hear about it. Your boss's boss is going to hear about it, and it's not fun, right? So let's avoid that. The test. All right, so this is a very nice operation. I used to use this a lot. There's a ton of reasons why the test is helpful. Now, and I'm going to share these slides, so if you guys don't have to take out, you'll get them, don't worry. Think of this as the way we tell you everything's great, right? Your Zerto account manager, they love to say, hey, it works all the time, 100%, right? This is the way to actually make sure it does work. And not only does it work, but you can use this operation to maybe automate some of your processes, right? So I was talking about those runbooks, right? Part of that VPG creation is defining your recovery settings, right? You're going through the process of saying, when this application comes up, I want these VMs to be on this cluster, on this storage array, this data store specifically. I want to come up on this port group or this network. If you're going to the cloud, this security group and this VPC and all that, right? Everything is predefined so that when you get to the point where it's a recovery operation, a couple clicks, I'm back up and running. You don't want to be scrambling for a runbook or anything like that, right? So I was in New York. I was an end user during Hurricane Sandy. Knew it was coming, was able to fail everything over ahead of time. But what happens when you don't have that option, right? And when a natural disaster, which we seem to be having more and more of nowadays, happens, right? Who would rather get to work as fast as possible to make sure that the systems are up instead of being with your families? No, seriously, come on. All right. That's my point, is that when these things happen, you want to be able to take care of it, get the job done, and more importantly, we like to make sure that you don't have to be the one who does it. You can pawn this off to that help desk that's working in a NOC somewhere that's already at work, right? It doesn't have to be your level 3 VMware engineers or architects, right? You can pawn this off on a help desk admin or maybe somebody who's remote, and they can restore your operations quickly and easily, right? That's just for the testing and the automation and things like that, right? What about that test dev situation before? Yes, you can make a clone of a application, or you could just run this failover test and go through that situation, right? But going back to that Windows Update situation, right? What if you could test the Windows Update without affecting production, right? Run a failover test. Execute the Windows Update within that test. And then if it's successful and the VM boots, cool. Just stop the test, destroy the environment, you're good to go. Now you have the confidence it's going to work. But it just doesn't have to be a Windows update. It could be application upgrade, database upgrade, any kind of patch testing you want to go through. Or if you want to just try something new and mess around, right? It's an environment that's going to be destroyed. Who cares? Assuming that it's in its nice little bubble and it's not talking to production. Because the way this works is we have our production site and we have our recovery site. I'm going to do my best, Vanna White impression here. When this situation happens, you can see we do not have VMs running at the target location, okay? The disks are there, the disks are replicated, and what we do is we recommend that you have a bubble network that's not talking to production, because when this operation is kicked off, your target copy and your production copy are up at the same time, okay? While you're working with your test copy, the production copy's up and it's still replicating in the background. So we're still replicating data, we're still putting checkpoints in, so you'll have points in time that you can recover to. And then these VMs just come up in that pretty little bubble, okay? And then you go through your operations, and unfortunately I didn't really finish the animation, but at the end of this, when you hit stop, those VMs are destroyed. Cool? Questions? Good question. The question was, I gotta get you a sticker. The question was, how long can you keep this environment up? So that's gonna really depend on, once again, amount of resources you have. Typically it's storage related because we are creating scratch disks for this environment because we do have the replica disk, we have the journal disk for the production copy, but we need to have scratch volumes that are set up in order to run this test, okay? That's gonna be limited on the amount of space and also the amount of change rate. So if you have a lot of change happening, you might churn through that space a little quicker than if you were just kind of bringing them up and just leaving them there, you forgot about it or something like that. Cool. All right, so that's the R and the T. Now we're on to the F, the failover, okay? Think of this as, I've had an event. Yes, sir? So doing the move VPG function? Typically, so the question was if I want to move my Active Directory environment from one side to another and validate, right? So typically with Active Directory, and you can, if you want to use Zerto to do that, it's fine. Typically with AD, most customers have a domain controller sitting at the target already. So you could either go the route where you're going to move that entire environment in one shot, assuming that you have zero infrastructure sitting there already, or you go the route where you have the domain controller at the source and another domain controller at the target, and they're replicating through AD replication. So it really depends on which route you want to go. Now, as far as recommending which one's best for your environment, we'd have to have more of a deeper conversation, but it can be done either way. So there are some caveats, but you can move AD as well. When you're doing a failover test, though, typically what I like to tell customers is, and what I did when I was a customer was, I had a VPG with a domain controller in it, and when I was getting ready to do failover tests, I would fail the domain controller over first as part of that test, and then I would fail the applications after. So the key thing was, though, I would only fail over domain controllers for failover test operations, not for live operations or moves. Does that answer your question? Yeah, so, but AD is a very special case just because usually you're going to go with that AD replication as well. And I'm going to get to the move operation. It's the M. So, spoiler alert. So, think of the live failover as had a situation, I need to recover some applications, and I need to do it from a point in time, okay? Now, by default, we assume that your source site's not there. There's been an incident, we need to recover, so certain things are going to be turned off, right? The ability to do a VM shutdown, the default option is going to be no, because once again, we assume your vCenter's not there. Reverse protection, turned off by default, because we assume your source site's not there, there's nothing to reverse protect to, okay? Now you can just click a button and turn them on, it's very, very easy, click. But this is going to give you that ability to roll back to a point in time, right? So if you think data loss event, could just be one application got corrupted, something happened, somebody deleted a VM they weren't supposed to delete, whatever it may be, you can recover to your target site. Now, if you're doing one-to-many, that target site might be local, just different cluster, and restore to the same site, get your operations back, you're back in business, right? But the key thing to note here is this operation is from a specific point in time. Make sense? Okay. Yes, sir.
Let's imagine the source side is gone, and you do a failover test,
Correct.
and then you realize you need another checkpoint. Can you stop it?
Yes.
But how do you stop it if the source side is not there?
So the question was, can you recover the systems if your source site's unavailable, and then let's say you recover and you realize you're on the wrong checkpoint, can you still pick another checkpoint? All you have to do is stop the operation. And the key thing to note is because the source site's unavailable, you're going to have a finite amount of checkpoints because we're not creating new checkpoints because that other ZVM, sort of virtual manager, is down, and we're not having the ability to create new checkpoints. So all you'd have to do is stop the operation, wait for it to clean itself up, and then pick another checkpoint and start it again.
But when you do a failover, basically it moves all the VMs from one side to the other and deletes them from the source side, right?
Not until you commit them. So the question was, is it going to delete the VMs from the source and once you bring them up at the target? That does not take place until you commit the VMs. If you commit the VMs to the target side, at that point you would not be able to pick another checkpoint. And that's another great reason for having one-to-many is, let's say you do go through this process where you commit something to a target location, you commit it without going through your due diligence and making sure that the application is good, and that VM gets promoted to the target. I'll explain. Think of promotion as I'm making that copy official, right? When we promote VMs, there's no longer going to be a journal at that site because we would typically create a journal at the target location, right? And that's now become the source. However, that does not affect that one-to-many copy. And if I'm losing anyone, just let me know and I'll say it again. Think of it as I have separate journals. So as long as you have the checkpoints for a period of time at that target location, you'll still be able to recover at that site. Now, you're still going to have to worry about, all right, now I've got a VM running over here. I got to shut that down. I got to now bring that one up over there and go through that process. But you'll have that ability as well. That answer your question? Awesome. All right. So once again, this is typically that I've had a DR event. I need to recover. I'm using this. Okay? Just a quick little pretty PowerPoint of what happens here. My site's gone, oh no, oh man. I need to recover it. We'll spin up those VMs at the target location. Then at this point, when we're in that position where we haven't committed yet, we call it, failover before commit. It's very similar to a test failover. So if I were to go ahead and stop this or roll it back, it's going to destroy that environment just like a failover test would. All right? The key thing here is if you're going through your testing process and there is a requirement to maintain the data that was written at the target location, instead of doing a failover test because that environment gets destroyed, you would actually do a live failover, commit the VMs, reverse replicate, fail back. Make sense? See, a lot of head nods. You guys are like paying attention. I like it. 4 o'clock? Come on. This is great. All right. There's beers and stuff, so this is going to be fun. So hopefully we'll get through this a little early and start boozing. What? Okay. So move. The move VPG. Now this one's hidden. And I have some product guys in the back, so I've been asking for a move button for a while now. Hopefully we're going to get one soon. But we see that test button. We have the failover button. There's also an actions button. Now in Zerto 6.5 and earlier, it's going to be on the bottom. In Zerto 7, it's going to be in the top. Within that actions button, that's where you can do the restore function that we talked about earlier, as well as for LTR, the restore functions are done through that top button, the actions button. The move VPG function is also up in that actions button. Now, move VPG is a little bit different, okay? This is a 0 RPO operation, meaning the data that you're taking from the source is going to be exactly the same on the target. No data loss. Caveat, both sites need to be up and healthy. So think of this as my example of Hurricane Sandy. Both of my sites were healthy before everything went down, so I was able to proactively move my workloads from one site to another. I used the move VPG function. Basically, I said, I want to take these VMs over here. move them over to the target. All right? Now, in a nutshell, shut the VMs down. Let's say you got a 10-second RPO, so you have 10 seconds worth of data that still has to go across. We replicate that data, throw in a checkpoint, boot up the VMs at the target. So the RTO is going to be slightly higher than if you were doing a live failover, just because we're waiting for a little bit more to be copied. But realistically, it's very comparable. Because of that little copy at the end, the VM is exactly the same. And this is really a graceful operation. Now, what are some examples where you would want to move applications? Come on. What kind? Data center migration. So you work at a service provider. See, I could see. Acquisition. It's another good one. What else? See, somebody cheated. It's up there, storage. So there's a ton of reasons why you would use this operation. Now, the storage migration is actually a good one because how many people go through storage refreshes every 3 to 5 years? How much fun are they? What? So I used to work at a company where it was a very large, very public hedge fund. We had a lot of money, had a lot of storage. And the storage migration, we had a storage migration team that literally would spend 18 months going from one platform to another because of all the data movement and all the data migrations and all that, right? What's great about Zerto is once you set up the VPGs, all that data goes across, and it's just sitting there. How many people have to create change requests when they have to make changes to the environment? How much fun is that? All right, change requests, love it. So because the data already exists at the target, you can actually go through the process of creating your VPGs up front. And I have a customer I'm working with right now. I think they have to move 45,000 VMs in about a year and a half. It's going to be fun. So the plan is come into work on Monday, create some VPGs, let the data replicate. While you're letting that data replicate, put in that change request for whenever you can get the window. And then the time frame that it's actually going to take to do the migration work, a couple minutes. Click a few buttons, select the VPGs, hit next, start move, get a cup of coffee, come on back. Oh, look, it's done. Yay, right? So you can really cut those windows down. And there's some discussions around what are best practices as far as going through this migration process, right? A lot of people are like, well, I could just do vMotions and storage vMotions and all that, but there's requirements on distance. So if you're going from one data center to another, you have that. It's also that rollback, right? Now, I've gone through some situations where I've done migrations and, unfortunately I didn't have control of my storage networking, so somebody would fat finger a zone set. It's always fun. Get there, missing a path. Yeah, sweet. You don't realize it at first until somebody reboots a storage controller, and then you find out that there was a path missing and you're going down hard. Sucks, right? So the ability to still have that rollback functionality and that commit policy ability is huge. And I'm just talking about storage, right? So let's say going from EMC to pure storage, right? Just picking random companies, right? I'm going to go from EMC to pure. But you know what? I'm going to take that EMC array, send it over to my DR site, make that my new target, right? You actually have the ability when you're doing this move to say, you know what? I want to keep those VMs on the array. Send them over there, use them as your pre-seed. Now instead of having to replicate everything from scratch, just do some delta syncs. Make it nice and quick, nice and easy. Okay? You'll have that ability. And that's just one example. Yes, ma'am?
How does the move function vary from just doing a failover for migration?
Good question. So the question was, how does a move vary from a live failover operation? The live failover is going to be from a checkpoint. So you actually have to pick a specific point in time. So there's going to be a little bit of gap. Okay? So that last bit of data that I talked about where we shut the VM down, replicate it, and bring it up, that's the difference. This is a 0 RPO operation. The live failover, there's going to be a little tiny bit of data, depending on which RPO is, that may not make it. So This is the much safer, much cleaner way to do it. Answer your question? Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
There's an application owner who's asking me to do a live VR test where he wants to run the production workflow from a recovery site.
Okay.
What would you suggest, move or failover?
So,
He wants to go back to the production site within like 7 hours.
so they want to write the data, keep the data, send it back? Okay. So the question was, some pain in the tush is asking her to do some work. All right. Complaining about, I need you to do this for me. All right. I need to move data, take that data, move it back. So, once again, it's all your world. I would suggest, though, if you want to simulate what a DR scenario would look like, I would do a live failover. Now, a move would be clean, it'd be perfect, everything would work, but it's not actually testing your DR, okay? A live failover is, my site's down. There's going to be, a little bit of data loss when you do that, so that has to be made clear. Just make like a little freeze or something like that. But that would give you the ability to test what would happen in a real-world situation, okay? Cool. All right. So, oh boy, wow. Been talking a lot. All right. This is just talking about storage migrations. Same thing in the cloud, right? Everything I'm talking about, it works one platform to another if we're looking at on-prem to on-prem, on-prem to Azure, AWS, et cetera, right? So if you want to go through these operations, you can. It just shows you what's going to happen. No VM sitting there. The data's there. We shut down the VMs at the target, at the source, boot them up to target, good to go. And then reverse protection is going to be on by default. All right, so how can you change the way you do things, right? And that's really what I want to get across is how Zerto will help you change the way you do things day to day, right? So I mentioned the journal, right? How many people leverage VMware Snapshots? And I apologize to my good friend from VMware who's sitting in the front row, but how many people use VMware Snapshots? Okay. How many people like VMware Snapshots? Okay. Sorry, dude. So a lot of that comes from the consolidation process, right? It's having to stun the VMs, having to have that little blip and things like that, right? And we've all kind of seen that, and I apologize once again. But you can still do that same functionality with Zerto, right? You can manually add a checkpoint to the journal. So there's an option, once again, that big actions button, click actions, add checkpoint, just to give yourself a little reminder, hey, this is before I'm doing those Windows updates, so if I ever have a problem, I have a point of reference I can go back to, okay? Same thing with, upgrade testing, things like that. You want to go through the process, give yourself a point of reference, same process. Add a checkpoint yourself. It's the same thing as doing a snapshot, but the key difference is we're not going to affect the production VM, okay? Journal file level restore, same thing. Instead of having to go to your backup system, use Zerto. It's there. You already have it. You have more checkpoints. Typically, you get a few thousand checkpoints per day in most cases, right? So instead of just having that one from the backup the night before, have a few thousand. Go for it. I'm not really going to take you that much more space. And then the one-to-many, we pretty much covered that as well. So got a couple minutes left. Now I'm going to make you guys do some work. The lightning round. All right? You guys know friends. Ross gets all excited. All right, scenario one. Show up to work on a Monday morning. It's a party at your desk. Not the good kind, not people want to talk about Game of Thrones, right? You got some corruption on your your SQL server. DBA's found out that it happened at 4:28 p.m. on Saturday. You need to restore it quickly. What do? File restore. Big. Huh. Small. Come on, man, work with me. There's going to be a checkpoint. That's right. I didn't put that in. You have checkpoints. What else could you do? Okay. Do a restore from 427. So you can do a live failover. You can do a journal file over recovery. You even do a test failover and then take the database out and send it somewhere else. But you have some options, right? So you can recover from this scenario. Say again? Copy the VM, yep. You have some ways to get around this, right? And there's some ways to do it quickly. Scenario 2, you get a phone call Tuesday morning, 10 a.m., your CIO is in the hospital. He just got his cloud bill, all right? So he mandates that all infrastructure as a service applications be brought back on-prem. What do? Move. Easy. You guys are good at this. Scenario 3, you're walking back to your desk, just had a coffee break, it's 6 p.m., you got a major upgrade happening tonight. So you talk to your Apple owner and you say, hey man, you tested this, right? We're all good, right? He basically doesn't respond, you just hear crickets. What do you politely suggest? Come on, man, why we just talked about that. Come on, man. For those in the back, he said you take a snapshot. It's wrong. All right. But you're on the right track. You're gonna add a checkpoint to the journal, okay? And then you're actually, once you do that checkpoint, you're also gonna go through a failover test and make sure that, things work the way you want it to, and then go do it in production. So scenario 4, you're watching Endgame for like the 157th time. I don't know where you got your copy from, but you got it. Yeah. CTO walks over and says you got a network connection going up and down. Sites keep dropping, coming back up. Your external customers losing connection to that mobile app that they really need. So you go to check out your secondary site, everything looks good. What do you do?
Stop streaming the movie.
Shut up. He said stop streaming the movie. Live failover, correct. Why?
Why can't we just fix the network?
Because that would take too long. Networking guys are slow. I apologize to all networking guys in the room and girls. So you say live failover. What was yours? Why can't you move? Audience? Because both sites have to be healthy to do a move. It was a trick question. I kind of threw that in there, but good job. It's both sides need to be up and running and communicating, okay? Last one, I promise, maybe. You currently have 16 data centers around the country. Due to rising real estate costs, you need to cut this number down to 8. While this is happening, you need to maintain 30 days worth of protection at all times. What do you do? It's a two-part answer. Give it. You in the back. Failover, then move the equipment. You can, but there will be a loss of data. A little tiny loss when you're doing a failover. Set up one-to-many, that's part of it. And do a move. Do a move VPG. You're there, you got the gist, all right? But it would be a move VPG, and you would have to have one-to-many so that you still have that copied. So let's say the move goes sideways, you have a way to restore. Cool? You could have long-term retention. That would give you 30 days. But yes, you could do that. You know what? She got me. All right. You could do a long-term retention copy. Yes, sir?
So if you're doing a move and reverse protection is enabled, does that mean you lose your journal after you finish syncing?
When you commit, the journal is wiped. But you would still have it at the secondary site. All right? So I know Peyton's about to start doing some stuff, so we should get out of here. But just real quick, we do have a hands-on lab. It is the Managing Protection Lab, so if you guys want to actually go through all this, guys and gals want to go through all this and test it out. And then there's a survey, so please say nice things about me. I'd appreciate it, and I do bribe people, so make that happen. Thank you very much, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you. Woo.